Hello Americans channel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
In the bustling suburbs, where secrets are often whispered behind closed doors, Kyla's life took an unexpected turn when her husband, Brayden, introduced her as his maid to a group of his colleagues during a casual home gathering. The confusion and humiliation in her eyes were masked by a calm exterior. But the wheels in her mind were already turning, plotting a response that would shake the very foundation of Brayden's facade. What Kyla did next not only left Brayden pale, but sent ripples through their social circle, revealing truths that were meant to stay hidden. Husband introduces his wife as his maid. He turns pale after she does this. Kyla had been spending the entire morning and midday in the kitchen, preparing for her husband's colleague to come over. It'd be a casual get-together. But she loved cooking for guests, so she'd set up a 3-course dinner and a homemade dessert as well. Little did she realize the thanks she'd be getting for her hard work. She was just done setting the dinner table, tending to the finer details of her setup, when Brayden walked in. He kissed her on the cheek before telling her it looks wonderful, love. With a smile, Kyla turned to her husband and kissed him back while she wrapped her arms around his neck. She hummed, then softly slapped his hand in retribution as he tried to steal a bite from the table behind her back. "No eating until the guests arrive, darling," she said with a laugh. As guests started to file in, Brayden waited until everyone was seated before welcoming his colleagues into his home. "This evening, we are not just colleagues, but also friends. My home is your home. This wonderful meal has been prepared for you by Kayla," he said, gesturing to where Kyla was smiling fondly at her husband. "My lovely maid," Brayden finished. It was all Kayla could do to school her features and not gape at her husband. It was an effort to stay calm after hearing those words come out of her husband's mouth. Kyla knew her confusion and humiliation was clear in her eyes, because Brayden gave her a warning glare. She cleared her throat and plastered a smile on her face. Then she decided to go all out and made a half-assed curtsy to her husband's guests. Kyla smiled again before she explained the first course to the guests, but the wheels in her mind were already turning. Instead of joining their guests by sitting down on the vacant chair, she'd set out for herself next to Brayden. She walked towards the door opening and made to stand vigil beside it. Kyla squared her shoulders and placed her arms behind her back, leveling her gaze to her husband. Brayden and his colleagues started eating, their guests unaware of what disaster was about to go down, unaware of Kyla plotting her response. Throughout the dinner, Kyla began to embody the role of a maid with unsettling precision, serving guests with a cold professionalism that was completely unlike her usual warm nature. Every now and then, Brayden would try to catch her eye, but she ignored each attempt. She called him my lord and sir, and would curtsy every single time she was done addressing him. The only thing Kyla hadn't prepared for was her husband cornering her in the hallway. When Kyla walked from the dining room back to the kitchen, she dropped the facade the moment the guests couldn't see her anymore. For a moment, she closed her eyes and stood there in the silent hallway until she felt a hand grab her elbow and turn her around to face her husband. "Kyla," Brayden whispered, pushing her gently against the wall. "No need," Kyla answered, her usual warm, melodic voice now cold and carefully devoid of emotion. She pushed away from her husband, creating space between them before demonstratively straightening her clothes. "I completely understand, Brayden." "No need to explain a thing," she continued with a practiced smile. What she saw in her husband's eyes in that moment simply hardened Kayla's resolve. She had to make sure to keep up her charade. So when she got back to the kitchen, Kyla started plating the desserts. She only gave herself a small moment of steadying her fraying nerves before taking the first 2 plates out to the dining room. When Kyla got done serving everyone, she excused herself and stepped out. Then she went to set up the first part of her revenge. When the guests had cleared out, praising Brayden on his maid's wonderful cooking, Kyla hardly waited until the last one had left before turning around and stomping up the stairs. Her husband followed closely behind. She maintained her distance, waited in the doorway of the bedroom until he reached her. Then she declared she'd spend the night in the guest room because, after all, maids don't stay the night. Kyla woke up to the sound of silence. It was a clear sign Brayden had left for work, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the aftermath of last night. She forced herself out of bed and made her way downstairs. The house was spotless. Brayden had cleaned everything, erasing any sign of the dinner. Kyla felt a sting of emptiness but shrugged it off. She made breakfast, then sat down with a pen and paper to plan her next steps. After breakfast, Kyla dialed Marlene, her best friend, her fingers trembling slightly. As soon as Marlene picked up, Kyla spilled everything about the previous evening's events. She tried to keep her voice steady, focusing on the facts, avoiding the whirlpool of emotions threatening to suck her in. Marlene's shock was palpable, even through the phone, reacting with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I can't believe he did that," Marlene gasped, ready to jump into action. Marlene's anger on Kyla's behalf was a fierce storm. Yet, she was quick to switch gears, her mind racing with ideas on how to help Kyla. "Okay, we need a plan," she declared, her tone turning conspiratorial. They brainstormed, weaving a strategy that would not only reveal Brayden's true colors, but also protect Kyla. They ended the call with a list of tasks and a promise to meet soon. Kyla felt a flicker of hope, bolstered by Marlene's support. Feeling a bit more grounded after the call, Kyla climbed the stairs to her in Brayden's bedroom. She pulled out a suitcase and began to pack her essentials: clothes, personal documents, a few cherished photos. Each item was chosen with care, a silent testament to the seriousness of her situation. Kyla's movements were methodical, her resolve firm. She knew this was just the beginning, but she was ready to face whatever came next. With the suitcase packed, Kyla dragged it back to the guest bedroom. She glanced around, realizing this room would be her sanctuary for the foreseeable future. It was a strange thought, being a guest in her own home, yet she couldn't let herself dwell on it. She had a plan to put into action, one that required patience and precision. Kyla set the suitcase down, her mind already racing ahead to the next steps of her scheme. Kyla heaved her suitcase into the guest bedroom, the weight of her situation pressing down on her. This room, once just a spare, now held her entire world. She unpacked her things slowly, arranging her personal items around the room. It was a small act of taking control, of making this space hers for however long she needed to stay. She was preparing for the long haul, ready to watch her plan unfold from this new vantage point. The town they lived in was known for its quiet streets and reserved neighbors. Kyla had always played the part of the polite and accommodating wife, especially in public. But after Brayden's humiliating introduction, something within her snapped. She was done being the quiet, reserved Kyla. It was time for her voice to be heard, for her story to be told. She knew the risks, but silence was no longer an option. It was time for action. After moving her essentials, Kyla found herself sitting at Brayden's desk, facing their wedding photo hanging on the wall. She stared at their smiling faces, a stark contrast to the turmoil she felt inside. This desk, where they'd planned their future together, now served as her command center against him. The irony wasn't lost on her. With a heavy heart, she turned away from the photo, ready to face the reality of their broken vows. Alone with her thoughts, Kyla allowed herself to finally feel the weight of the previous day's events. The frustration and sadness she'd bottled up came flooding out. She sat letting the emotions wash over her, acknowledging the hurt and betrayal. But Kyla knew she couldn't drown in her feelings. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she wiped her eyes and opened Brayden's laptop. It was time to shift from feeling to action. With Brayden's password entered, Kyla began her search through his laptop. She combed through files and folders looking for anything that might hint at his plans or reveal his secrets. Financial statements, contracts, email exchanges. She gathered them all. Every document she found, she printed or saved onto a USB drive. Kyla worked with a single-minded focus, determined to arm herself with as much information as possible. It was a race against time and deception. Kyla carefully slid the stack of printed documents behind the guest bedroom's headboard. She made sure they were completely out of sight. A hidden cache of evidence against Brayden. This makeshift hiding spot would have to do for now. As she stepped back, checking her work, she couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and determination. These papers held the key to her next steps, but also to a confrontation she wasn't quite ready for. The doorbell rang, and Kyla rushed to answer it, finding Marlene on the other side. The tight hug they shared spoke volumes, more than words ever could. They settled into the living room, wine poured and ice cream scooped, a temporary balm to the turmoil of Kayla's life. Marlene's presence was a reminder of the support system Kyla had, a lifeline in the midst of her stormy relationship with Brayden. Over their comforting treats, Kyla's emotions bubbled to the surface. "This is the last time, Mar," she said, tears glinting in her determined eyes. "He's humiliated me once too many times. This has gone too far." Marlene's grip on Kayla's hand tightened, a silent vow of solidarity. "It'll be okay," Marlene assured her. "Brayden will get what he deserves." Their conversation was more than just words. It was a pact for justice. With renewed resolve, Kyla and Marlene revisited their carefully laid plans. Kyla retrieved the documents from their hiding place, handing them to Marlene for safekeeping. They went over every detail, ensuring no stone was left unturned. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about setting things right, about reclaiming Kyla's life from the shadows of deceit and manipulation. The documents were the first step in a much larger journey towards freedom. "Mar, these are safer with you," Kyla insisted. As she handed over the documents, she knew that keeping them in the house was a risk too big to take. If Brayden found them, it would all be over. Marlene nodded, understanding the gravity of what she was being entrusted with. "Don't worry, Kay," she reassured her friend. "I'll keep them safe." It was a moment of trust, but also a reminder of the cautious dance they were engaged in. As the time for Brayden's return neared, Marlene got ready to leave. They shared a long, tight hug, a silent exchange of strength and hope. "Stay strong, just a little longer," Marlene whispered, infusing Kyla with determination. Kyla nodded, a mix of fear and resolve in her heart. Watching Marlene walk away, she felt alone yet empowered, ready for whatever Brayden's return might bring. Shortly after Marlene's car disappeared from view, Brayden's vehicle made its way into the driveway. Kyla, donning her metaphorical maid's uniform, prepared for an evening of pretense. She listened as the door opened, stepping into her role with a heavy heart yet firm resolve. This facade, she reminded herself, was crucial to her plans. With each step he took inside, she braced herself, a silent warrior in her domestic battlefield. Kyla greeted Brayden with a deeper curtsy, keeping her eyes deliberately averted. "Welcome home, sir," she said, injecting a measured dose of respect into her voice. She extended her hand to take his coat, an offer he blatantly ignored, choosing instead to walk past her. Despite the cold exchange, Kyla found a strange sense of satisfaction in maintaining her role, a testament to her unwavering resolve amidst the storm. Brayden's voice cut through the silence. "Kyla, "This has gone on for long enough. You have made your point," his annoyance unmistakable. The shift in his demeanor was palpable. Where once there was desperation, now stood agitation. Kyla, recognizing the change, fortified her resolve. This battle of wills had escalated, but she was not ready to surrender. She stood firm, a beacon of calm in the face of Brayden's growing storm. Kyla maintained her composure, responding with practiced ignorance. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir, but dinner will be served shortly," she stated, her voice a calm contrast to his frustration. Turning her back, she ignored his continued attempts to engage, her steps toward the kitchen steady and determined. In this intricate dance of wills, Kyla was intent on leading, her actions speaking volumes of her determination to see her plan through. Throughout the evening, Kyla maintained her role as Brayden's maid, a silent protest to his earlier humiliation. Yet, when dinner was served, she took her place at the table. Sitting opposite Brayden, she ate quietly, her actions measured and deliberate. This small act of joining him at the table was a bold statement in itself, challenging the norms they'd fallen into over the last tense hours. After the last bite was taken, Brayden broke the silence. "So, can we talk about this now?" he asked, his tone softening slightly. Kyla paused, setting down her cloth, her lips pressing together as she considered his request. It was the opening she had been waiting for, a chance to address the elephant in the room. Yet the apprehension of what was to come hung heavily in the air between them. "Talk about what, exactly?" Kyla asked, her voice steady, her gaze meeting his across the table. For a moment, she dropped the Maid facade, embracing the vulnerability and strength of her true self. The physical space of the table provided a buffer, giving her a sense of safety to finally confront the issues that had been simmering beneath the surface of their marriage. "Your ridiculous behavior, maybe," Brayden retorted, his patience fraying. The mask of the affable husband slipped, revealing a glimpse of his frustration. This shift marked a turning point in their conversation, the pretenses falling away as they prepared to delve into the heart of their conflict. The air was charged with tension, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. An argument erupted, with Kyla accusing Brayden of years of humiliation. "For 5 years, you've made me feel small," she declared, her voice rising with each word. The grievances of their marriage spilled out, a torrent of pent-up frustration and hurt. This was not just about a single evening, but the culmination of years of neglect and disrespect. Kayla stood her ground, determined to make her voice heard. As the argument escalated, Brayden initially denied Kyla's accusations, clinging to his version of events. But in his fervor to defend himself, he slipped, revealing a deeper truth. "I couldn't have told my colleagues that you were my wife," he admitted, his words betraying him. This slip opened a new chapter in their confrontation, hinting at motivations and secrets Kayla had only begun to unravel. Brayden initially denied everything Kyla accused him of, his words a tangled web of deflection. But then, he slipped, admitting he couldn't have introduced her as his wife to his colleagues. This confession cracked the facade he'd maintained, revealing the strain and hidden motives in their marriage. Kayla, seizing on this slip, pressed him further, demanding the truth behind his actions and the real reasons for his deception. "Why?" Kyla asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Brayden's response was a torrent of accusations. He blamed her for not fulfilling her role as a wife, for not bearing him a child, for losing her beauty. Words designed to wound deeply. Kyla listened in disbelief as Brayden continued his cruel rant, his words painting a picture of his resentment and dissatisfaction that had evidently been brewing for years. Kyla was rendered speechless by Brayden's harsh critique of their marriage. Tears streamed down her face, a silent testimony to the pain his words inflicted. With a heavy heart, she stood up, towering over Brayden with dignity. "I understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but laden with resolve. Turning away, she left the dining room, leaving Brayden to contemplate the impact of his brutal honesty. Kyla hurried to the guest bedroom, her sanctuary from the storm. Locking the door behind her, she slid to the floor, her body racked with sobs. The guest room, once a place of refuge, now echoed with the pain of Brayden's words and the shattered illusions of their marriage. Here, in the solitude of her grief, Kyla allowed herself to mourn the love she once believed they shared, the tears a cleansing torrent. After some time, Kyla's tears began to subside, replaced by a steely determination. Frantically wiping her face, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the pause button on the recording app. The entire conversation, Brayden's confession and cruelty, had been captured. This recording, this undeniable proof of his true feelings, was her ace in the hole, a pivotal piece in the whole, a pivotal piece in the unfolding drama of their disintegrating marriage. The sun rose on a new day, and with it, Kyla's resolve hardened. She didn't need to dissect Brayden's reasons anymore. His actions had spoken louder than any words could. Picking up her phone, she called Marlene. "We're moving ahead with the plan," she declared. It was a moment of clarity and determination. Kyla knew that looking back was no longer an option. The path forward was clear, and she was ready to walk it. As soon as Brayden left for work, Kyla wasted no time. She dialed her lawyer, her voice steady as she explained the situation. The call was a mix of legal jargon and personal revelations, a necessary step towards her liberation. Kyla outlined everything, from the emotional turmoil to the concrete evidence she had gathered. It was a call that set the wheels of justice in motion, a beacon of hope in the midst of her stormy marriage. Next, Kyla texted Marlene, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Can you bring the documents to the lawyer?" she typed. It was a tactical move designed to keep her actions under the radar. Marlene's involvement was crucial. She was Kyla's lifeline, a trusted ally in the battle that lay ahead. This text set the stage for the next phase of their plan, a silent yet powerful act of defiance against Brayden. Kyla knew that her safety and sanity depended on playing the long game with Brayden. As she waited for his return, she steeled herself for the role she had to resume. This wasn't about giving in. It was about strategy, about biding her time until she could make her move. Kyla was no longer the woman Brayden thought he could control. She was a player in her own right, ready to turn the tables on him. When Brayden walked through the door that evening, Kyla greeted him without the Maid act. A return to normalcy that was anything but normal. Brayden's skeptical frown was met with Kayla's calm facade. They were both actors in a play of pretense, each aware of the undercurrents but choosing to skate on the surface. It was a delicate dance of appearances, a facade that Kayla was determined to maintain for just a little while longer. The dinner table between Kyla and Brayden was a battlefield marked not by words, but by the silence and the unspoken. Kyla navigated through it with a calm exterior, nodding and making the right noises as Brayden spoke about his day. The tension was a tangible presence, yet she managed to keep the peace, a testament to her strength and determination to see through the facade of normalcy they both upheld. As they prepared for bed, Kyla found herself studying Brayden, a sense of alienation washing over her. The man beside her, once her entire world, now felt like a stranger. Their routines, once shared with love and laughter, now seemed like empty rituals performed out of habit. It struck her deeply how much they had drifted apart, how the gap between them had widened into a chasm filled with lost love and missed connections. Following Brayden into their shared bedroom, Kyla was enveloped by a wave of melancholy. There was no anger, no confrontation, just a silent acknowledgement of the distance between them. She yearned for the days when they were young, and in love, when their future seemed bright and promising. Those memories now seemed like echoes from another life, a stark contrast to the cold reality of their present. Lying beside Brayden, Kyla stared at the ceiling, tears pooling in her eyes as his snoring filled the room. It was a sound that once brought her comfort, a sign of his presence. Now it was just another reminder of the gulf between them. The tears were for what was lost, for the love that had turned into resentment. She lay there, a silent sentinel of their failing marriage, waiting for sleep that refused to come. Despite the sleepless night, a sense of hope flickered within Kyla. As she lay awake, she realized that tomorrow held the promise of change. She had made her decision, chosen her path forward. The night's darkness would give way to the light of a new day, a symbol of the new beginnings that awaited her. It was a long night, but Kayla held on to the belief that better times were on the horizon. And with that, she found the strength to face what was to come. Morning light crept in, finding Kyla exhausted, but nestled in Brayden's arms. Despite the chasm of their waking hours, the night had brought them together in an unconscious search for comfort. It was a bittersweet reminder of their deep yet troubled connection. Kayla lay there for a moment, contemplating the complexity of their relationship, bound by history and emotion, even as they stood on the brink of change. With a sense of urgency, Kyla untangled herself from Brayden, her movements swift and determined. The sudden shift woke him, and his voice, tinged with confusion, called out to her. She didn't stop, didn't look back, her heart racing as she closed the bathroom door behind her. The sound of the shower drowned out the world, a temporary shield from the reality waiting outside, as she prepared herself for the day ahead. Kyla remained in the sanctuary of the bedroom until the sound of the front door signaled Brayden's departure. She exhaled, a mixture of relief and resolve washing over her. The events of the night lingered like shadows, but Kayla's path was clear. She couldn't face him. Not now. Not when every step she took was a step away from the life they had built together. Towards a future she had to believe was hers to claim. Dressed and ready, Kyla checked her phone, the screen lit with notifications from Marlene. Texts and missed calls piled up, each one a silent scream for her attention. Marlene's urgency transmitted through the digital messages, a palpable concern that pierced Kayla's resolve. She knew that whatever lay behind those messages was another step in the unraveling of her current world, a step towards the truth she was seeking. Returning Marlene's calls, Kyla's voice was steady, reassuring her friend that she was all right. Marlene wasted no time diving into the details of her visit to the lawyer with the important documents in hand. The weight of Marlene's words was heavy, each one carrying the gravity of their situation. Kyla listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities, each revelation from Marlene, a piece of the puzzle they were painstakingly putting together. Marlene, with urgency in her voice, recounted her visit to Kyla's lawyer. She had delivered the crucial documents, and the next morning, the lawyer had found something significant. His prompt call to Marlene wasn't just routine. It was a clarion call for Kyla to make an immediate visit to his office. The weight of his discovery hung in the air, a pivotal moment that promised to shift the direction of Kayla's turbulent journey. The lawyer's insistence on a swift meeting was a beacon of urgency that Kyla couldn't ignore. Marlene relayed his message with a seriousness that pierced the morning's usual tranquility. There was no time for the day's ordinary routines. This was a moment that demanded immediate action. Kayla's response was as swift as it was decisive, propelled by the need to confront whatever revelation awaited her at the lawyer's office. Without sparing a moment for breakfast, Kyla dressed quickly, her movements fueled by a mix of apprehension and determination. Brayden had taken the car, leaving her with her bike as the only means to reach her destination. The ride to the lawyer's office was a physical manifestation of her racing thoughts, each pedal stroke bringing her closer to the answers that lay in wait, answers that could redefine her path forward. Arriving at the lawyer's office, Kyla was met by Marlene, whose presence offered a momentary respite in the form of a reassuring hug. Together, they entered a united front against the uncertainty that awaited them. The lawyer's office, usually a place of order and logic, now felt like the setting for a significant turning point in Kyla's life. Their greeting to the lawyer was tinged with anticipation, ready to face whatever truths his findings would reveal. Seated across from the lawyer, Kyla braced herself for what was to come. The document she had provided held a surprise, one that even the lawyer hadn't anticipated. His explanation began, each word carefully chosen, unraveling the unexpected truth hidden within the pages Kyla had entrusted to him. This revelation promised to cast a new light on her situation, offering clarity amidst the turmoil that had become her constant companion. The lawyer laid out the truth. Brayden was on the brink of losing his job and had been pretending to be wealthier and more influential than he was, all to avoid dismissal. In their small town, where everyone knew each other's business, appearances mattered. Brayden's act was a desperate bid to maintain his status and prevent gossip, a facade that was crumbling under the weight of his reality. Kyla listened intently as the lawyer revealed Brayden's intentions. He had aimed to use their marriage to access the inheritance she received from her great-aunt. The revelation sent a chill down her spine. Her marriage, it seemed, was entangled in a web of deceit from the start. Brayden's designs on her inheritance painted a picture of manipulation she had never suspected, changing her perception of their union entirely. The conditions of Kyla's inheritance were news to her. The money was accessible only if she remained unmarried or had a child. Brayden's insistence on starting a family suddenly took on a sinister hue. It was not driven by a desire for parenthood, but by greed. For 5 years, he had waited, hoping to unlock the wealth Kyla hadn't even known was conditional. The lawyer's revelations pieced together the puzzle of Brayden's behavior over the years. Armed with the knowledge and evidence of Brayden's deceit, Kyla took a decisive step towards freedom. She signed the divorce papers, a symbolic act of reclaiming her life and severing ties with a man who saw her as a means to an end. The lawyer provided her with incontrovertible proof of Brayden's schemes, documents that would support her case and protect her future. It was a moment of empowerment, the beginning of a new chapter. With the divorce finalized, Kyla found herself in possession of the large sum from her inheritance, a fortune she had been unaware of. Freed from the shackles of her marriage, she decided to celebrate her newfound independence. She and Marlene planned a wonderful holiday, a journey that symbolized her liberation and the start of a brighter, more authentic life. It was a celebration of freedom, friendship, and the promise of new beginnings.